My name is Justin Ray Sampson, and I'm part of Neon Night Studio. And this is our game Yokai for our beta submission. What did I do for the game? I was at the start. I was the character concept artist, and then I moved on to 3D modeling. Then I went on rigging the characters, and then animating the characters after those initial steps. These are our main inspirations for the game. Um, Before we started developing the game, we were looking for inspirations. One of the inspirations were Cyberpunk 2077, and then MTG Kamigawa set, and then we also wanted to make it a Japanese inspired game. So we were looking for what can we use for a Japanese inspired game. Initially we had like just like a traditional Japanese like samurai and so on, like Japanese neon aesthetic. And then we went on like, what if we make it yokai? Like using folk tales as the main basis for inspiration. So we went along with that. So we use Oni, which was like demon, uh, a demon character in Japanese folktale, and then Tengu, a bird like uh deity, and then Yuki on a snow lady. Yeah. And then we also use like for me, I use weapon as my main inspiration when developing the character, as to get a feel what they would look like in game, and as well as how they would fare in combat. And then here are some of the first from the iterations, the first Oni design, the first boss design, and then how we transform it to do the second one, which is more less detailed because the way the game looks right now, like we're using like pixel shaders, so it's like we wanted to make less detailed. Um, Again, some of these some of the designs here were changed when modeling it, just for the sake of like, it makes more sense in this way. So for example, the club, the Tetsubo, which was the main weapon for the Oni, was larger on the tip, lower on the near the handle, just for like size comparison. Oh. Next up is the player. Player is the same thing. We changed like the initial concept. Um, we wanted to stray away from like katana, sword weaponry for as the main weaponry for the player, as it's been overused for a lot of games. Instead, we went for naginata, which is like a almost a spear like weapon, but it's more fluid when you're using it. So we went with three iterations, and ultimately we went with this last one here, this last design, and we changed it up a little bit, lessen the details and like enlarge this section, like the weaponry. And these are the basic enemies for the game. The first one is a mid-range enemy that uses her hair as her weapon, so she does a whip attack. We only made the attacks basic so that it doesn't have to be player doesn't have to memorize a lot when fighting these characters. Next one is the Kamadrone. The Kamadrone is does a simple slash attack, and then that's about it. And then they're more common to find when battling in the yokai world. The next one is the Spider Drone. Spider Drone is a range attack. It shoots out energy balls, and it'll directly go to the player or aim at the player. These are the second most common enemy that you can find. And then move on to the first three bosses. So we have three bosses in total for the game. Again, the first one is the Oni. The Oni is the first character we designed, so it makes sense to have it as the first boss of the game. Um, yeah. And then the second one is Tengu. The Tengu, this current Tengu design has been scrapped. Uh, we changed the way it looks in 3D modeling instead. So it's because the only reason we changed it is because they're all beginning to look the same. So we wanted to change the Tengu just for variety. Um, the next one is the last one is the twins or twins. Um, the Yukiona and her sister. The sister has been scrapped, unfortunately. It was meant to be a double boss battle, but we went with a single boss character. This is mainly due to time constraint. Um, and ultimately it benefited us for the submission, or it benefited us in the long run because it reduces time for me to model all four characters and just three characters instead. The build for this character is similar to the player, so it's gonna be I just use the existing model for the player and then like change some of the assets and then retopologize them again. And here are some of the character sheets. The character sheets are like used for just for guides. Guides for me when I'm doing the shapes for the characters. So they're like easier to model for me, especially when I'm doing it in ZBrush and then ZBrush to max and so on. And then texturing them later also helps so that I know which colors to use for the game or for the characters. Moving on, give me a sec. Moving on to the softwares, 3D models. Here are some of the softwares I use. I use ZBrush again. I mentioned that earlier. 3ds Max for the retopology, and then adding a little bit more models to the character if I miss something, or it could be easier done in Max. And then I move on to Blender. Actually, I was initially planning to do it in 3ds Max for the animation or the rigging and animation, but I found Blender to be easier to rig and animate. So we went along with that. So and then lastly, importing those models into Unity. And the first one here is the player model. And the weapon Naginata, and then the companion Nezu. So Nezu will follow around the player for almost in the entire game. And then when modeling the characters, I made sure the joints are like have loops on them so that they have better bending as well as the fingers and the arms, the head, the neck, the middle part, the body part, or the chest, or not chest, the stomach area. Same goes for the Oni. The Oni is the same, follows the same steps when modeling them. I made sure they have like better looping or bending topology, so that when I do animation, it doesn't do any weird motion when they're playing their animation. And this is the change we made for the Tetsubo. Next up is the Tengu. Tengu is pretty much simple compared to the first two. He doesn't require as much as like topology or doing loops for their joints because the joints are like mechanical, so we're just um bend back and forth the arms and the legs. And also they'll be hovering, so there's not much animation required for this character, apart from like attacking and like yeah, doing its attack animations. Next one is Yuki-Onna. Yuki-Onna follows the same suit as the first the player and the first boss. Um, Again, it uses the same model as the model template as the player, so they're pretty much the same model except for clothes accessory and like hair, and then the weaponry. And here are some of the rigs. I use Blender again. They're pretty easy to rig. They have their own unique like bones like for the skirts. So I separate the skirts and the not the skirts, the coat model and like the body model so that I can animate these independently. So as well as the wings, I separate these wings from the main body so that I can animate them like individually. Animation sequence. We'll be we'll see the animations in sec. I'll be playing the game or showcasing where all my work has been in the game. In total, there's 8 animations for the player, 3 attacks, one idle, one death, one running, one stagger. Um, and then I think there's a few more that I forgot to mention, like healing as well. And then it only has 2 phases. Phase one has with the Tetsubo. The phase two has um just pure bare hands, like going feral mode. And then Tengu has 12 animation in phase one. And then Yuki Onna has 7 phases in 7 animation for phase one. Lastly, other things I've done for the game. Um, I created the illustrations for the dialogue icons. So this is when they're speaking, there will be a text bubble, and then player icon will play. Its text will pop up. That was the text bubble was done by our UI artist, and then the illustrations were done by me. And then it'll keep jumping back and forth, and it'll be more visible or it'll be more noticeable who's talking because they have their own color coding based on the character icons. And then here is the player and the helper or Nezu. Non in-game assets. We also wanted to do a cover art. This is unfinished. It's still in concept phase. We have these are the main inspirations for doing the concept art. We have Tales of Arise, Nier Automata, Neo, and Tales of Zestria. And then we'll move on to the game itself. Alright, this will be a recorded gameplay by one of our developers, and just showcasing through the game. And I'll be commentating through it. So, I'll be commenting through my parts. So we can see here the player has the dash, running, idle, and it has 3 movesets, 3 attack animations. It'll break. Um, it has 3 attack sequence. It'll do 1, 2, and 3, and then it'll break if second one doesn't play through, or third one doesn't play through, or yeah. So it has to be a certain amount of seconds before the thing breaks or the sequence breaks. Then the entire sequence will reset again. So it'll be one or 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and then it'll be so on. And we also have healing. Healing is just pressing A and holding A, and it'll create like a bubble, um, VFX or not bubble effects, like aura effects around it. And once this, it drains the power, and once that's drained, it gives +1 health for the player. And then there's also the dash, and then I believe somewhere here. We also have time stop mechanic. Time stop mechanic is just pressing um, LB and RB at the same time. It will drain power so that like there's a balance between using um, time stop because it both uses power for healing and power for like the time stop, so it just balances out. And then it's the first boss. First boss has two phases. Uh, Renamed it Reiju. At the end of the near the after the alpha. And then this work is a little bit of collaboration between programmers, animators, and visual effects artists. So there were 3 people in total, or 4 people in total, including the designer as well. So the designer created the movesets. I animated the character. Our programmer like implemented all the animations and visual effects for it, and then our visual effects created like the orbs, the lightnings, and like all the slashes the the boss has done, and the player as well. Here it's entering phase 2. So phase 2, it destroys its weapon, and then it becomes berserk mode. So it starts doing like random lightning effects. This only calls the thunder, and will summon like a bunch of lightnings around it. While making these movesets, we have to keep in mind that player might just spam inside the player the boss when doing these castings. So we made sure there's like a little bit of breathing room for both. Like it keeps from like spamming like XXX to the player or to the bosses. And this is our second section that was done by our level designer and our designer. Our level designer and our environment artist. The basic entries were not done by me, by the way. It was modeled by another 3D character modeler from our team. Just moving on to the next area, the next boss phase, just to showcase where all my stuff went through. So the only thing that I have done, or the stuff I done mainly for the game is character, boss models, and player model, and then animations, and then rigging for them. Since we have a big team, we were able to have more freedom. I mean, or like, we can be more selective of which area we want to work with. And then the next one is the Tengu. The Tengu is our next boss. Compared to the first one, it uses wind as its main element, while the Oni uses thunder. When designing the Tengu, our lead and designer and I were talking about um, making it a range attack, and having a passive that summons around tornado. And this becomes bigger and bigger as the game goes on, or as the fight goes on. And also we didn't just want to make it range attack. We also wanted a melee again. Going back to the first one, we just didn't want the player to just spam the attack while it's doing its cast. And lastly, um, we'll be entering the final boss as well. So this is gonna be the last section of the game. It's gonna be the boss fight against the main boss, Yuki. It's the snow lady. We currently have 5 movesets for this character, um, and the rest are currently in the works. Lastly, here are some credits for the who did what for the game. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for what I've done for the game.